Howdy! How's everybody out there in YouTube land this morning? I hope this finds you well. I hope that the weather's great where you are, and I hope you're being creative. What we're going to do today is a little stenciling. This is something that I have not done on the show yet, and I thought this might be a nice time to bring this up because I'm going to be putting some signs together to take to some of the craft shows that I've got coming up. And this plank is one that I got at Walmart in the craft section. You probably get them at any craft store, and it's just a little wooden board that they've put a little whitewash on. They've stapled a little rope hanger to the back of it. This piece, I don't have my measuring stick up here. Let me grab the measuring stick, and I'll tell you exactly the size on this so that you'll know, but turn it going the right direction here. This is a 12-inch by about 5 1/4-inch plank, and you can use any kind of wood for this. It can be painted or it can be unpainted. It depends on what color you're going to use for your stencil letters as to, you know, what you want to do here. I'm going to be using black paint on this distressed white board. And I've got a stencil here. This is a plastic stencil. I get my stencils various places. They have them at Walmart. They have them all different places. I like this one real well wherever I picked it up. So, you know, I've got a whole batch of these different kinds. But this one says, "Welcome to our garden." And it's just a plastic stencil. And when you put it down, you can measure to be exact on where it is. I tend to kind of eyeball these, and I know that this one will fit here on this plaque and leave me about an inch or an inch and a quarter extra space on the sides of it here. And I'm going to get me some tape going. You can use any kind of tape, really, to tape these down with, but I prefer to use a good quality tape. And if I can get the package open that this is in, it would be beneficial. I should have done this before the show, especially considering that I work with cat paws and can't get anything open anymore because of my arthritis. But let's see, I may need something to pry it up with a little bit here. Let's see if I can get some help. I have some of my desk tools here to pop this thing open. They don't take these things into consideration when they're making them, that old people have problems. There we go. Got the lid popped off. This is frog tape, and there's the lid on it. It says frog tape on it. And you get the carton opened up, and you got this green tape inside of it. And I tape my stencils down. Now, you can use a spray adhesive on the back of them. You want to spray it on, and then you want to let it sit for a few minutes before you try to put it to the wood. You want it to just get tacky if you're using the spray adhesive. I don't like using spray adhesive on them because it just leaves a residue on your wood, and you got one other thing to try to clean up and do that without messing your lettering up. So I try to stay away from using the spray adhesives if I can. I mean, if I'm working with a surface that maybe, you know, it's just not real even and everything, and I need a little bit more help getting the stencil down, then I'll resort to that. But it's not something that I try to make a habit out of doing. And there again, try to make sure that you get your stencil flat. If it's not flat, raise it up. Smooth it out. And put your tape down again. And just make sure that it's flat down to the surface of your wood. And you want it taped down good because you don't want your stencil moving around when you go to put the paint to it. That will have your lettering all uneven and make it look messy and unprofessional. You want it to look very professional when you get done with it. And you keep the tape off of the letters themselves. You don't want, you know, wherever your letters are on this, you don't want the tape up on those letters. Okay, we've got the tape down on it. And I'll put the lid back on my tape package here so it can be hard to open the next time I need it. Okay, now we're going to talk about brushes. This is a stencil brush. Stencil brushes are flat on the ends. You can use sponge brushes if you want. I prefer to use a brush type of brush with my stenciling paint, but you use whatever works best for you. You'll have to practice around with it a little bit, and I always suggest that maybe you get some scrap wood or whatever surface you're going to be using primarily for your stencil. Some people like to stencil on paper. Some like to stencil on plastic. You know, whatever your medium is for stenciling, that's what you want to practice with. Okay. Now I'm going to pull this rope down behind. See, I'm pulling it down behind because I don't want to get any paint on the rope itself. So I pull it to the back there so that I don't get it messed up. And I'm going to put some paint down on my surface up here. And I'll show you how this works. Take my jar and put some paint down. That's way more paint than I'll need, but I'd rather have more out than I need than not. And I'm going to wipe my palette knife off good on that lip before I wipe it down with a paper towel. It takes very little paint to stencil. You're going to be amazed. We go at this with what is referred to as a dry brush. You put some paper towel down. Let's see if we can get that to lay fairly flat there. And take your brush and you go straight down into your paint and pick some paint up on the end of your brush. And I dip it a couple of times because I want to get a good coating on all the bristles there on the ends of the paint. Okay, now you're going to take that paint off the brush. You're going to say, well, isn't that the dumbest thing ever? What would you put paint on it for if you're going to take it off? You want a dry brush. You want as much paint off of there without taking it all off. You know, you just pounce it up and down. You don't wipe it. You don't swirl it. You pounce it up and down on the paper towel, taking paint off of the brush. Okay, when you get the majority of the paint off of the brush so that it's, you know, it's not coming off clumps anymore, then you're going to come over to your board and you're going to just pounce it up and down. You don't rub it. You just pounce it up and down on your lettering. If you go to rubbing it, it's going to go up underneath that stencil and make a mess. And you don't want that to happen. You just want the letters to be darkened in. Just pouncing the brush up and down on the letters. And when you get it covered in a spot, you move on. If you see a place that you missed, go back and pounce it a little bit more. You want the letters to be colored in. But you don't swirl it. You don't, put it down and rub it and any of that. You just pounce it. When you get to the point where you're not seeing any paint coming off of the brush anymore into your lettering, you're going to go back and get a little more paint on your brush. Then you're going to come back to your paper towel in a clear place on your paper towel. See this? And you pounce it up and down until you get a dry brush. There's a dry brush. And you go back, there's still paint on that brush, even though it's coming off fairly dry on the paper towel. And you just pounce it up and down. Just tapping. Now your stencil's going to have paint on it, and that's no crime. And this is a good time for me to talk about the stencil because you can use these stencils over and over and over and over and over and over and over again if you take care of them. Some people clean their stencils and some don't. If you are planning to clean your stencil, the best thing to do is to have a little tub sitting beside your desk that the stencil will fit into. when you pull it up off of the work and you just drop the wet stencil into the soapy water and just rub it gently to remove the paint. Other people do not wash their stencils at all. I'm one of those people. Just let the paint dry on the stencil. It ain't gonna hurt nothing. It don't eat up the stencil. It don't cause any issues. Just leave it alone and hang your stencil up. I put mine on a hanger and have a special closet where I put my stencils. And then they're ready the next time that I want to use them. And I'm using my left hand to hold the stencil actually down, making sure that it stays adhered to the wood. It ain't going nowhere. And all of my action is straight up and down with that brush on the opening in the stencil to tap my paint in. Now, there's different kinds of paint that you can use. You can get a paste paint that is especially for stenciling, that you feel so inclined to use it. You know, that's great if that's what you want to use. I'm just using regular acrylic paint. This is Apple Barrel, come from Walmart. You know, I'm just showing you that you don't have to use a special paint in order to do this. I put another paper towel down because I wanted to get this brush clean or dry so that I can continue to tounce my lettering on there. I call it touncing. Just tounce that brush up and down on the open part of the stencil till you get good coverage with the paint. You don't want it thick, you know, you don't want it to look like you come in with a paintbrush and actually paint it in the lettering. You just want a cover of paint. You know, how when you take an ink pen and you mark it across a piece of paper and it just lays the ink right to the paper, it's not puddled, it's there's no big, you know, wet marks of it like you come in through with a paintbrush. It's the same way with this. You want it to just look dry on the surface of the wood. I think that's a mistake a lot of people use with stenciling, is they think that they have to lay in, you know, tons of paint to it, and you don't. With a dry brush, just a little bit of paint on that brush. Tippy tap, tippy tap. And it's going to take however long it takes. Once you get it all tapped on there, I give it just, you know, a few minutes for it to dry. It doesn't take all day because it's not thick. Don't take forever for it to dry because it's just a thin layer of paint put down on the wood. So it dries real quick. And when you go to take the stencil off of the wood, you want to pull it up quickly. You know, it's sort of like ripping off a Band-Aid. Whoosh. You know, you're just going to pull it up off of there because to fiddle around with it is going to mess up your lettering. And you don't want to do that. Now, I'm going to see about flipping my... Well, if I do that, I'm going to have paint all over everything. Here, let's fold that in two. Just got one more letter to go. Tounce some paint off of there. That's looking good. Just tap it wherever there's an opening in your stencil. Get your letter covered. Just like that. And then you just look at it one more time and see if there's anything else that maybe needs to be going over again. You look at the openings in your stencil and make sure that you got them colored in. If there's anything that looks like it needs maybe just a titchy touch or more. And there it is. Now, since I'm using acrylic paint, it washes out soap and water in the sink. And usually I don't even use any soap. I just use water. Just rinse them out until it comes out clean. And then I set them upside down in my little containers. I've got Pringles can containers is what I use for my brushes. Set them upside down, let the bristles dry. So now we will start pulling up tape. See, I just removed that tape without moving the stencil around. And the paint that's on top of the plastic on the stencil is not that thick that, you know, it would run off anyway because you use a dry brush. Okay. Pull that piece off. And that just leaves this last piece down here. Now I'm using my left hand on the corner. See down here, I've got my left hand on the corner. And I'm going to get my fingernail up under that tape. As a matter of fact, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to grab the upper right-hand corner like that and pull it up and away from my work, just like that. Then I can take a hold of my tape on here and peel it off of my stencil and set my stencil aside. And when I get up, I'll put it back on the hanger and hang it back in the closet. All right. Welcome to our garden. Now, this is ready at this point. It's dry, and I can put Krylon on it so that I seal it. If somebody wanted to hang this outside, it would be safe to, safe to hang outside. It is wood, and it will get ruined eventually if you leave it hang outside. But, this would be pretty hanging on a garden post. It would be pretty hanging on a patio over your potted plants. It's a nice little piece of wood with a little sign on it, and it's good to go. You wouldn't have to seal it if you didn't want to. I always seal mine. I think that it helps them a little bit. It makes them a little shinier. If you don't like the shine, then don't put the Krylon to them. Don't use a gloss. Use a matte. If you still want to seal them, you can seal them with a matte. But there you go. That's how this works. So I hope you enjoyed this. And if you did, leave it a thumbs up. Be sure and check out all my links in the description of my video for my Patreon, for my Etsy, for my Twitch and Twitter and Instagram and all the places that I am. It's BrendaG's Designs every place you look. And like I say, if you like this, share it. Let everybody know how to be creative. And be sure and leave it a thumbs up. And with that, I think there's only one thing left to say, and that is Brenda's crafty. Be like Brenda. Bye.